Earth as a singular planet. In fact, it is anything but. For this is a story not of a universe, but a multiverse, where universes and planets, such as Earth, were replicated and mirrored across a vibrating, infinite plane. Some barely different from the next. Others drastically so.
This is DC On Screen. Every week, Dave and Jason talk about the multiverse of DC properties on film and television. But be warned, if it's been officially released, you can expect they'll spoil it.
Welcome into DC On Screen. This is a very special episode of DC On Screen. And not very special in a Zach finds some pills and Screech's backpack kind of way. We have a guest on the show today. We don't normally have guests, but joining us tonight is the West Coast editor of SFX, a reporter for Total Film, and digital spy who has also written for The Nerdist, and is the author of the new 100 Things Batman fans should know and do before they die, Joseph McCabe.
Hey guys, thanks again for having me.
Dude, you're welcome. Thanks for being on. And by the way, you have a great action star name, Joe McCabe.
Yeah.
Just sounds like a very young Bruce Willis should be playing you.
Yeah, or the sequel to Bullet.
Right.
The
Yeah,
sequel to
it's
Bullet.
not bad. When someone pointed out that it's close to McBain, I was comfortable with that.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good name. So, I think I'll start this off by asking you, okay, so this book has a foreword by Paul Dini. When you wake up in the morning and you look at yourself in the mirror, how much does that inform how you carry yourself throughout the day? Are you just perpetually on air?
I'm kind of a spoiled brat, to tell you the truth. My first book came out about 14 years ago, and it was a book about Neil Gaiman.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Hanging out with the Dream King, and Neil wrote the foreword to that one. And then
Heck of a start.
Last year I had a yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
And then last year I had a Superman book come out in the same format. It was 100 Things Superman fans should know and do before they die. And Mark Wade wrote the foreword to that. So I don't know what it's like to have a book without a foreword by a nerd superstar.
That must be that's a terrible burden to bear that you don't know.
It's like yeah, it's a ridiculous first world problem.
Yeah. That's, yeah. I mean, you really know. I mean, that's a hell of a trifecta, though, between Mark Wade, Paul Dini, and Neil Gaiman to have the forwards.
Right.
That's congratulations outright. Like, I would just retire in general from writing ever again. Walk away.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously, I could get hit by a cab right now and pretty much break even.
Just discontinue my Microsoft Office subscription.
Yeah. But what's interesting is seems like the foreword is kind of a strange thing in general. It feels like, if you were sexting, you would be sending someone pictures of other people's dicks. You know what I mean? Like, look at these guys. You'll get an idea.
I did read the I read the Superman forward too. It's not all cotton candy. Like, Mark Wade did challenge you to a trivia contest.
That's true.
He did, and and then I instantly I did a signing with him at his store in Muncie, Indiana, shortly after that book came out, and I walked up to him and I was just like, Mark, anything but that, that's ridiculous. And then just to confirm that would be the worst idea in the world. Random customers would come up to Mark. I think the folks who shop there regularly, they played this game with Mark where they would just come up to him and I think they would just start showing him random covers of Justice League and he would have to guess the issue number. From the entire history, and he would just get it right every time. March 1963, blah blah blah, and number, whatever, and it was just like, this is stupid. The guy's walking, Wikipedia. So,
So you're not putting odds on that?
No. I'd sooner challenge him to armed combat than that.
Fair enough.
Well, you might actually win that one.
Fair enough. We're gonna have
I'd have a fighting chance. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Do like an obstacle course, but for DC folk, it'll be fun. I feel like Jeff Johns might win it. He's in decent shape.
Yeah, Johns looks like he could kill somebody with his bare hands.
Yeah. Need be.
And yet I'm pretty sure he was one of the ones going, hey, don't let Superman snap the neck.
He knows restraint when he
Yeah,
has to do that one.
I have the Superman. I have the Superman book and the Mark Waid. Just a few things that he mentioned in the foreword. I was going, I don't know what this is. What I didn't know these Superman things existed.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's very invested in Superman.
So this book, this 100 things Batman fans should know and do before they die. Dude, you have managed to distill 78 years of history across several different mediums into like a 400-page book with pictures, and you've done it immaculately, and I'd even say fairly. Like I can catch little glimpses of like bias with like certain things, like what your opinions might be on things, but it's very fair. And on top of that, you've got all these interviews with these people. I mean, talking about the people with the forewords, you've got extensive interviews with Jerry Robinson, Adam West, Burt Ward, Paul Dini, Bruce Timm, Kevin Conroy, Diedrich Bader, Neil Adams, Carmine Infantino, Scott Snyder, Frank Miller, Tara Strong, Danny O'Neill. There's just so many. Nolan, Ledger, Bale, Sale. That's not even all of them. This is ridiculous.
I don't want to run Dave out of breath here, but there are plenty more.
There are plenty more. Absolutely,
it really is.
must-have
It's
for
an
Batman
experience
fans.
where, like, as you move through the book, you finish an interview after a subject, and you flip to the next page and go, "Oh, no way, him now?
Yeah.
Oh, Lord."
Thanks. That's high praise coming from you guys. Thank you.
Yeah, and you know, I'm the type that I'm like, look, it's 400 pages. I'm not going to read the table of contents until later. So all of this is a surprise to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's like reading the instructions for a new piece of electronic equipment. You know, worry
Never,
about that later.
never done it, never will.
right. Yeah. Well, the interview aspect is really what made it interesting to me. What made me want to do it, because when I did the Superman book, you know, initially when they asked me, all they wanted was prose. All they wanted was 100 chapters, and I was just kind of like, well, you know, the first rule of writing a book is to write a book that you would buy. And as a fan, I don't know if I would just buy a book, you know, of prose, you know, talking about 100 different things. You know, there's a lot of sources, reference books out there, a lot of reference websites, you know. But when they said, yeah, go ahead, you can use the interview, you know, interviews you have, interviews you want to do, you know, whatever you want. I was just, oh, this is great, you know.
Yeah.
They basically, you know.
So they kind of let you off the
they
leash a
didn't
little
care. They just, yeah. And so I did that for the Superman book, but with the Batman book, I wanted to do it even more because there's just so much, you know, and so many guys who are living legends, so many guys who are still with us, you know, with Superman, a lot of the great ones are sadly gone. And,
Sure. Yeah.
But post Dark Knight Returns, in a way, is it, you know, at least half of the legendary Batman creators.
That's fair.
And they're still around. So this one wound up being, I think it's about a half of it is interviews. I think there's at least 200 pages of interviews and then probably 200 pages of prose chapters, you know, including photographs. And it's the biggest book I think that they've done. I think at 400 pages, it's the longest title that Triumph Books has put out, certainly in their pop culture title series. You know, they publish a lot of books related to like sports and whatnot. But as far as pop culture goes, they've done a volume on Star Wars and one on the Avengers and one on the Beatles and one on Elvis. I think this one they've said at 400 is their longest to date, and it was not easy for them, by the way, because they were pulling in people working on other books, I think, to try to help copy edit it and to get it done. But God bless them that they you know that they gave me that, because
The resources.
it would yeah,
actually,
it wouldn't have got
that was a
done
good question.
otherwise.
Like this is a ton of research. I mean, this is for a lot of people, this would be a dissertation.
Well, I wish. My wife is actually a PhD student, so when you use the word dissertation, like you know, it's kind of like the reason I don't call myself a journalist, because to me, journalists get like shot in the Middle East. You know,
I got you.
Like I'm an entertainment reporter, and so you know, when I hear dissertation, I was just like, oh God, you know, that's what. My wife does. So
Well, it
anyway.
certainly has that much background. I mean, it's definitely minimally it qualifies as a thesis if you don't want to upgrade it to dissertation. But it's definitely got the I understand the street cred kind of reticence, but it's still there's a ton that you really have to know what you're talking about, and you go out on a limb on several occasions where some people don't want to tread, like the thing with Jerry Robinson and Robin. These are things that are coming to be more common knowledge, but they're not the standard story yet. So regardless of I don't know how much painstaking research went into it in general, but I do know that it's thorough. You did the homework.
Oh, thanks. Well, it's easier now, though, of course, to do the homework on Bill than it would have been 10 years ago, right? Especially after the documentary. That was
a great documentary.
I'm assuming you guys have seen
absolutely.
doc on. So thank God that exists, and that has kind of made it mainstream. His legacy. And that's largely due to the efforts of Mark Tyler Nobleman, who wrote Bill the Boy Wonder, the children's book, the secret co-creator Batman, and then actually found Athena Finger and brought her to DC's attention and vice versa. And, and all of this really happened within the last 10 years, and most of it is due to his efforts, due to all his research. So both that children's book, which I pray to God he one day does like a full-size adult biography of Bill, because, I realize information is scarce, but he certainly deserves it. And there's a need for it. But yeah, so that between that book and the documentary, it's nice that it's getting to be, and of course the credit, the fact that now, DC credits everything as, Bob Kane with Bill Finger. To me, it's like, it's almost like right now, I don't know, it almost seems like, I don't know, almost like a moral prerogative to sort of to put Bill's name out there, because it's just like, it's just like there's so many decades that have to be made up for that,
I have a fear that that's not the last time a contract will be written like that. It's not like the industry necessarily learned something from it.
Yeah. Well, the fact that Marvel settled with the Kirby family, and that Bill got that credit within, I guess they both happened within like a 5-year span or something like that. Mm-hmm. That alone to me is kind of crazy, because when I remember when Siegel and Schuster got their credit, in the mid 70s or the late 70s, due to Neil Adams' efforts, and that was a huge deal, and that was all we had in a way for decades. But then, these two major things happened within a few years of each other. And it's, so I guess what I'm saying is that gives me much more hope than I had for decades prior to that. Whatever. No, there's no cockiness though, because a lot of unheralded creators out there.
Sure. Maybe it's at least getting in the right direction.
I feel like these days a lot of the higher ups at Marvel and DC and these kinds of companies are a lot more sensitive to those issues, though. How do you not hear Neil Adams talk about, Siegel and Schuster not being able to go see their own Superman play? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they had no money. How do you hear that and not change something inside of yourself?
Yeah.
Right.
It seems like a lot of them are more sensitive to it, even though it's still kind of shitty the way they do.
Yeah. Well, it's that old adage, I think, that you become more conservative as you have more to conserve. And, once Disney bought Marvel, that, it's not Marvel's fault. It's just the way things work. Marvel becomes a more conservative company once Disney buys it. It's because it's bigger and has more assets and more resources. It's just the way life works. What's that?
Yeah.
Way more lawyers.
Way more lawyers. Well, yeah. So
that entertainment phrase, "Don't fuck with the mouse."
It's the first rule in Hollywood.
It really is.
Back when Disney first announced they were buying Marvel and all the fans freaked out, they were like, "What the hell? Disney's buying Marvel? This is going to be awful." I thought, it's better than Toy Biz owning Marvel, which I remember having.
Right.
We've upgraded. Why?
Exactly. Right. It's like, wait a minute. So John Lasseter calls the final shots instead of Avi Arad? I'm happy with Lasseter.
Right?
like, Jesus.
Yeah.
Wait,
right,
so it's either the guy who made Toy Story or the guy who made those really cheap Spider-Man action figures back in 1994. That's tough. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm gonna grab a one-sided coin and see what happens.
Like going back to the finger thing, I did. How much do you want to like just? You know how they have those questions like, oh, if you could have lunch with one dead person, one person who's passed away, who would it be? A lot of times I feel like Bob Kane. I just want to sit him down and show him that documentary and go, the world knows now, Bob. We know what a dick you are.
You know what? I hate to say this, but I feel like everything that I've read and heard about Bob Kane leads me to believe that that you would get the same reaction you would if you sat like Donald Trump down and showed him some of the injustices that are out there right now. I don't even know if he would have the skill set necessary to interpret it, or to process
everything
it.
I hear, it's he lives in his own narrative. Like Bob Kane,
yeah, exactly.
Is he definitely had some narcissistic tendencies, and that enables you to kind of. You set your parameters for what you believe and what you know about, and you go about your day, and then anything that falls outside of that doesn't necessarily have to compute. It's not even that you're bringing it in and it just doesn't check out. You don't even check it out. It sounds like from what I've read that Bob Kane was one of those kinds of people that he kind of wrote history as he went, and for him, he didn't have a qualm about writing a contract where no matter who else worked on this project that was a developing IP that was an IP that was so bad that when he brought it over to Bill, it was unusable, and then Bill fixed it, and he was like, "Yep, it's mine now." And this is totally the thing that I'm taking responsibility for. It's insane. But yeah,
really, that just sounds like a politician to me.
Yeah, it's I gotta admit, Bob Kane probably would have made a decent senator somewhere if you just profile him.
He missed his calling. Yeah, he should have gone to Washington.
And then that being said, he did have the seed, and by seed I mean he basically had a rough idea of some tiny minuscule amount of a character that they brought to him and said, "Hey, can you match Superman?" And he said, "Eh." And then Bill fixed it for him, but at least I don't know, maybe without the we don't get Batman. I don't know.
Yeah,
right.
He jerked off onto a piece of paper and said, "I don't understand why this isn't art."
Right. And Bill went, "Well, let me just reconfigure some of it for you," and there you go. Bob's your uncle.
All right, so I have to ask this. It's a stupid question, but I have to. In terms of bad aesthetic, trunks or no trunks, man? What do you prefer?
Jeez. It's a harder question to answer than it is with Superman, because, aesthetically, the Superman trunks really nicely break up the costume, whereas with Batman, there's so much black to begin with, and so much dark gray that the idea of a moving, living shadow isn't all that bad. So I don't have a big horse in this race, as I would with Superman, where I'm just like trunks, yes, absolutely trunks. But
fair enough.
So I don't know. That one's something like, I don't know. I wouldn't. That's not really the hill I would personally choose to die on. But I mean, it just depends on the Batman, I guess. You know what I mean? Like Neil Adams' Batman to me looks wrong without trunks, and the Christian Bale Batman looks wrong with trunks. So that kind of thing.
That's fair.
I don't know. There's a few shots in there are a few shots in Dark Knight Rises when he's fighting in the daytime where you can just see how easily that rubber is bending, and I'm going, I could really use some trunks here, Ben. Could really use some trunks in those pants.
Yeah.
This
he was probably thinking that about the time that the rubber was bending into his abdomen. I don't think you and Bill were on the wrong page, separate pages. No, all right. Similar question. So, where do you stand with the bad ears?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Again, I mean, it's the problem is he's so malleable. I mean, there's just so many different ways of interpreting him that work. That again, it's like long years on the Adam West Batman would look wrong to me, and short years on the Tim Sale Batman would look wrong to me. And I feel like they're both equally valid interpretations. It's weird, because it's like with Superman, it's like I feel like there's just like, he really should be bright and he really should have trunks, and with Batman, it's like, God, it's almost like an acid test to see how bad an artist you can be if you can't make him work. Because it's just like, it's ridiculous the number of different versions that work. I can't think of another. Daredevil. If you look back at some of his costumes, it's like that. But it's like, God, every single version they've done, like there's some artist out there can make it work.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who hate it. But, like, personally, in my own life, I know a lot of people who hate it. But if I could, I would just post... if I had the room, I would just blow up every cover Kelly Jones ever did with those, like, 3-mile-long ears and that extended Marshall Rogers cape and just go with it. Just everywhere.
Okay.
I would have it everywhere.
Okay. Okay. They are lovely. Yeah.
We disagree.
Totally
on this.
impractical.
Like, for me,
in a
2 inch ears just
world.
adequate. It's fine. We're good. I got the mean. And in the Capullo version, you can or the Snyder Capullo version, you can just make those daggers, just rip them right out and go. I'm fine. But it's like dagger length handles. It's that all makes more sense to me.
Yeah. That makes sense.
How do you feel about all the stuff Snyder's been throwing into the Bat canon lately? Scott Snyder.
Yeah, sure. Pre All-Star Batman or
just overall, like, because I feel like he hasn't really.
Well,
I don't
post
feel like
is a good designation though, because like that's almost established at this point in a way. And
yeah, like he's
really kind of working on his swan song with Batman. It seems like in the last couple of years.
Yeah, like when he wrapped his run on the title with Greg, the regular run, that was kind of the end, I think, of his mythology for Batman. I think All-Star Batman is more like, his Legends of the Dark Knight, where, he's just kind of taking individual stories and whatnot. But as far as, his regular run went, I liked it, the one thing he did that I think stands out, is this sense of the city being the damsel in distress to a greater extent than most comic creators had it. There was always this sense that the whole city was like on the verge of like losing its soul.
Yeah.
And that was something that Nolan, tried to do a little bit in Dark Knight Rises, but I hadn't seen it done on a regular basis in comics before. Usually it seemed like there was either like, individuals he was trying to save or something, some chunk of the city that was representative of this. But with Snyder, it was almost like, and I think this comes from the fact that Snyder is like such a, and such a New Yorker and has such a strong love of New York that he kind of sees the whole thing as one entity, and he just, always wants to wrap his arms around the whole thing. And that's why the last issue of that run, by the way, is kind of just like, I don't know if you've read it, but it's
like the
basically
Endgame
just
run?
like Batman gets. Yeah, it's actually just a single issue. It was after the last story arc. It was just kind of an epilogue. It was basically just like I can't remember the name of it or even the issue number right now, but it was basic. And frustratingly, it's not collected in the volume that collects the last arc. So you actually have to buy the separate volume to get this one single issue. But it's Snyder and Capullo's swan song, and it's basically just like Batman gets a night off, and
nice.
And it's the city pays him back for everything he's done for them, and and it's just kind of like a love letter to Gotham. So. Yeah, that's what stands out for me about Snyder's run. Plus the Court of Owls. I think they rank amongst the great Rogues Gallery villains.
It was a great, kind of seamless addition.
Yeah, exactly. When you say seamless, I think that's a good way of describing it, because it's, like Harley Quinn she feels like she's always been a part of this universe. Like she was it feels like she could have been created in the 40s or something like that. And the Court of Owls kind of feels like that. Like, it's like, oh yeah, of course there would be this long, secret society, that makes, of course. Yeah. And so, there's a sense of inevitability about it.
How much pull do you think the Court of Owls has, though, moving forward? Like, we saw them done on Gotham, and I personally didn't like the way they did them on Gotham as opposed to the books. Like, do you think that there's more of a, like, hey, let's one and done it? Or do you think
I know what you're saying.
A lot of ways?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. It's kind of like, I know what you're saying. I think it's kind of like the Borg, where it's like,
Now I know what you're saying.
Yeah, they kind of have one great story in them, and then beyond that, because they don't really have a single figurehead or it's a League of Assassins without a Razagul. So
yeah, that's actually well put.
So they get to threaten him once, but it kind of doesn't, recurring wise, they don't have a face for him to keep punching.
Yeah, and if they keep coming back, even just like with the Borg, they kept coming back in Voyager, and it was just sort of like, oh my god, why? Like we don't, right. You've just diluted it so much now.
Exactly, and even when they gave the Borg the Queen in First Contact, it's like, well, this makes they're not the Borg now because the Borg aren't supposed to have a queen, but
I feel like there was a storytelling tack they could have taken to make a little more sense for me, but whatever.
With the comic or Gotham,
with Star Trek.
Oh yeah.
With the Borg, I got sidetracked on the Borg. Sorry.
Yeah, you can sidetrack Dave with Star Trek on pretty much anything.
Good to know.
You can sidetrack me with pretty much anything, really.
No, it's not all just lost acorns. It's just specifically with Star Trek. You can.
That's his kryptonite, huh?
That squirrel gets going, man.
So, I want to jump back in time. How did you get into comics?
Let's see. Probably like most people. Little kid, probably 2 years old. Dad works at a hospital. He works as a business manager at a hospital. There's the hospital thrift shop has more comic books than it needs. So it's like giving them away. He comes home one day with a box of comics. Yeah, this is like 1974. So old comics in 1974 are like 60s comics. Silver Age classic comics. Nice. And, some of them have the covers ripped half off, some of them all off, but, nonetheless. So like my earliest images are like late 60s Justice League covers and some of the Kirby Fantastic Four covers, and some random Silver Age Superman and Aquaman covers and things like that. That was like the first batch, and then I think my mother threw those out. And then I think he brought home another batch when I was like 4 years old, and I was just starting to learn how to read or something. And I remember the first words I learned that I remember reading were in the Fantastic Four Annual number 5, where Reed Richards asked Ben Grimm if he will be Franklin's godfather. Because for some reason I just remember those words. And I told Stan Lee this once when I was talking to him, but I couldn't remember the issue number at the time, and so I just told him, and I was like, so I thank you so much because I think you kind of taught me to read, and I'm like, but I just don't remember the issue number. And Stan puts his arm on my shoulder and he goes, I would have been more impressed if you remembered the issue number. It's just like, this is so awesome. I was just insulted by Stan Lee. Yeah. But it was great.
And Mark Waid pops up and goes, 132.
Yeah, exactly. I think you're referring to.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well,
That's
anyway,
great.
So yeah. But yeah,
right,
so
what kept you going?
Yeah. I mean, it's God, what keeps any of us going? It's like it's the American dream machine. It's the ultimate medium in a way. It has I think Will Eisner put it best when he said that they have the emotional immediacy of movies, but they have the potential for audience participation or involvement of literature. So, it's kind of like the best of both worlds in some ways. You can go at your own pace, but you can, get that great, emotional charge that you would with cinema. Yeah. I mean, that's it in a nutshell, I think, like most people, I quit for a time when I discovered girls, and then,
that's
went
natural.
Back to them several years later.
Absolutely natural.
Right, exactly. And then go back to them several years later when you realize that, DC's putting out like Vertigo comics and, this is like, it's really appealing to you when you're in college, and there's no such thing as HBO at that time, or at least not like, like it is now.
Not in its current state.
So yeah. No, in its current state.
So similar question then, like, how do I put it? Your college, I looked up the college. So chemical engineering?
Yeah. Yeah. Ridiculous.
And then MBA.
Ridiculous. There was, more ridiculous. Total waste of time.
And then journalism. Those are like three different takes in general.
Yeah. The engineering was a total waste of time, and so was the MBA. But there was one good thing that came out of it that, like, and that's like I met my wife. So I never want to like kill myself for wasting that time, because I know that it was, invaluable in that sense. But otherwise, I didn't like, I went into chemistry in college, and then switched to engineering, chemical engineering. And then just, kind of, it was one of those things where I just didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and I was good at math. So I just kind of fell into engineering.
Sure.
And then when I realized, exactly. Yeah. And then when I realized I didn't want to do it, I kind of saw business as a way out. I was like, oh, well, if I get my MBA, I can go into the business side of the chemical industry.
Been there.
And then as I was getting the business degree, I was like, I don't really want to do this either. And, but all along, I always wrote, I was always kind of like writing in one form or another. In college, I did movie reviews for my school's paper. I went to Villanova, so I was always writing for the Villanova and doing that stuff.
Sure.
And by the way, though, I did it with a pen name because my mother got pissed off because my grades sucked.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So it was like, I'm totally working hard on my grades, and then you have another name doing real work.
Totally, yeah. Because I hated engineering and chemistry so much, so so eventually that disdain for them caught up with me, and I just didn't do that well in the courses. And she got, I remember just getting mad about that. So I used a pen name. I went with Roger Thornhill, which was Cary Grant's that alias he uses in Hitchcock's North by Northwest.
Nice. Very nice.
Thanks. So
and you're not going to get caught on that one,
No. At this point, my mom doesn't care. But yeah, so if you go through old issues of the Villanova, you see these reviews by Roger Thornhill. That was me. But
well done.
Interesting. Yeah, thanks. So go ahead.
I had one question related to that. This is going to be a silly one, but chemical engineering in general, it is a very one. I wanted to know, like, that's. I mean, you're like 17, 18, you pick a major kind of thing. Maybe you're 19 and you try to pick one, but like it does kind of indicate a sci-fi bent.
Oh yeah.
Is that like something that's been around for you?
Yeah. Oh God, yeah. I mean, comics and sci-fi go hand in hand. It's just that I don't think I understood fully like how much sci-fi was out there or what forms it took until a little bit later than 4 years old, right? Because you don't, but it was always that kind of like enticing forbidden fruit kind of thing, or that kind of like, thing that was a little bit scary, but like you just couldn't resist it, like I remember.
On the other hand, it was a thing that like Sagan was kind of pimping in that time, was like, this isn't scary. This is actually really very romantic. You just have to embrace it.
Oh, totally. But I was too young at that time to like appreciate Sagan. Or even maybe be awake when he was, when Cosmos was on PBS. Yeah. But I remember like running behind the sofa when Doctor Who came on. That opening music was always like terrifying.
Gotcha.
At like 6 years old. I don't know why, but it just like freaked me out, that eerie synthesizer music. And Star Trek was kind of like, okay, this is kind of cool, but it was still a little bit scary because I just remember every episode like, they're gonna die. Like every every episode, it was just like, I was just terrified for the crew because it was just like, oh, they're totally going to be killed. Like, so it was like, and I was like a really sensitive kid because like I had this overprotective mom and I would, watch Disney cartoons and, she would throw away the superhero comics. And, so Star Trek was also kind of terrifying. But like, you get a little older and then, turn 12, 13 years old and Wrath of Khan comes on TV and you watch it and it's like, oh, this is good. And then you videotape it and you watch it over and over and, and then stumble into SF literature because, you go to the library and the Star Trek novels are there, but who's this guy's books next to them? Who's this Ray Bradbury guy?
Nice.
Yeah, so, yeah. And then Bradbury doesn't just write a sci-fi, he writes horror and he writes fantasy and all these other guys are writing those genres and, and then, the scope kind of becomes slowly there and it's I don't know how it is now. I imagine it's much more of like all at once for kids with the internet because it's all like instantaneous, but when 70s and 80s when you don't have that, you're just kind of like you're getting this little pictures but you're not getting the whole image, you're just getting little pieces of the puzzle and then finally you put it together. I don't know. I like to think
favorite examples of like the transition between kind of the new digital age and the previous age was analog. I don't know what to call it, but like like when '89 Batman came out, there was what was it, like a 2-minute kind of teaser for it that happened on the news. It wasn't part of anything else. This aired, and like this was like you had fanzines, kind of the normal distribution methods, but you also had like. This was a minute or two of the footage, and it was huge. It was backbreaking for the networks to actually air it. Mm-hmm. Now you get that 3 times a week before the new season of Flash airs,
Oh, yeah, and you get it on
that was
half the time.
Absolutely groundbreaking. And it didn't even have music, if I remember.
No, it didn't. It was just the sight of the Batmobile, like, racing down the street, and
it was enough.
It was like nothing out of it. It was unbelievable. Yeah. I remember the episode of Super Friends, the first time they ever mentioned that Batman's parents, or showed Batman's parents getting killed on screen, or alluding to it. Mm-hmm. And it was like, that was groundbreaking, and that was like nothing compared to the '89 Batman. That was just a Hanna-Barbera cartoon that was, still, poorly animated. But a good script. So when that '89 movie came out, Jesus. I totally upended the culture in every way. And it was just, I don't know. It's hard to like, I guess it's when like this, it was really the closest I think I've ever seen to when Star Wars came out, where it was just like it hit all the quadrants and everyone in every quadrant connected to it in some way. Whether it was like, oh, Michael Keaton's funny, I'll see anything he does, or, oh my God, I've been waiting for a live action Batman that takes it seriously my whole life, or, oh, wait, is this like that Dark Knight Returns? It's just like, or even just like you would go to the department store. I remember, like, I would go to like, Macy's with my mother or something, and they would have like, the t-shirts there with like, Brian Boland's Joker on like a t-shirt or something. And it was just like, what the hell? You never saw a t-shirt like that in like, a department store. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. There are sections at Target and Walmart now. Whole sections.
Oh, yeah. Totally. Oh my God. Those action figures that came out from that, they were the crappiest action figures, the Bob the Goon action figure and they gave the crap, they used the same sculpts as the superpowers, but they didn't do as nice a job on them. So they didn't, but even those were just like a big deal. It was just like, oh my God, this is like a dark Batman action figure. Yeah. It's like, it's just,
that might have contributed to why, I was a kid, but even getting those like, Batman Forever Happy Meal toys, I didn't care when I went back and saw it. It was a little kind of weird. I was very young. So like I had all the Happy Meal toys and I was pretty happy about that. But like later talking about genitals being blown sky high, I didn't, that just was not a problem for me. I was just really happy I had like a Penguin-mobile.
Right. Or the Bat Missile, which was, looked like a zip gun in a way. Like it really, like you could hold that up to someone's neck and probably like get them to give you your
might
wallet
have,
if you wanted to. It was just like,
it might have been. We might have weaponized fat children, is what happened.
That's what that's.
I listening to you guys talk about it, I may not have actually thought about it until just now. 89 Batman may have ruined my childhood.
In what sense?
Well, I saw it when I was for my 6th birthday. All right, I had no like preconceptions. I mean, luckily I didn't have any ideas about like typecasting or anything, so I was just like, yeah, Beetlejuice.
You weren't
can
like,
be Batman.
yeah,
That's
Mr.
cool.
Mom, screw that. You were like, yeah, cool, Michael Keaton.
Right. Well, that was part of how I got excited for Batman, is because I love Beetlejuice, and my mom told me like, oh, it's the same director, and kind of explained that to me. But Batmania had blown up so much, like Batmania was so crazy that I just thought comic books were mainstream. So like, I went to school going like, I'm loud and proud, and no one else had that same concept. They were just like, you are lame.
I see.
I had no idea.
I see. Yeah.
I'm kind of glad though that like at least you still got to be called lame when you were a kid at school, because like now because I think that's character building, and I imagine now little kids. It is like, let's face it, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger and all that. And now little kids go to school and everybody's got their Big Hero 6 or their Wonder Woman backpack or whatever. So it's not the same thing. Like, I don't know what it takes to get abused at school now. Like, I don't know how dorky you have to be.
Yeah, I don't know if there's an emblem you can wear that's going to make that happen anymore.
Right.
You need this. It does. I mean, even in my subgroup of nerd friends, there was a WB cartoon, I want to say, named Freakazoid. Like, I referenced that.
Oh, God, yeah. Bruce Timm worked on it. Yeah, it's great.
And even that, I kind of got a little bit of shit over. But I was like, no, seriously. I mean, you were all watching the same cartoons. Why are we not on board with this? So there's always there's always some subcategories.
I know a 20-year-old who actually cried because they took a quiz and it turned out they were Slytherin. I don't know.
You should have known that. Sorry, buddy.
I'm like, sweetie, you dress in all black. What'd you think was going to happen?
So they identified as Gryffindor. Yeah.
I don't know.
No, this is kind of person who is like
is actually the only one I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, the loyalty of the Hufflepuffs or whatever it's called. Yeah, I think that's what the one they wanted. Yeah, I was just Anyway.
All right, I got a little bit of straight book questions for you, right? Right.
Yeah.
So, all right, the book does a pretty good job of telling like the history of the people, the characters, objects, imagery, all of that individually. You start with like Fingering Cain. You go through the pretty much the entire iconography. But the thing that I really enjoyed is like something like 100 Things. One of those kind of books can be treated as a like page turner. Every time you sit down and you read it, or it can also be treated as a coffee book, like a coffee table book. You just pick it up every now and then and read the next thing. So you can go either way with it. But the thing I liked about it was you kind of like starting early on and going through the history. It's largely chronological, but not decidedly so. So like going through each chapter, like if you're getting to the Jerry Robinson chapter or the Neil Adams chapter or something like that, you might there's almost a recapitulation of how the character got to Jerry or Neil. So it does I think a pretty good job of staying chronologically bound in a way that like if you read it, there's a recap and here's where you are in the history. It's actually in that way really easy to digest. But technical question, is that purposeful?
Yeah, well, that's partly born out of the publisher's format. The idea with the 100 Things series is that you're ranking the topics in order of importance, and they're also designed so that they're designed with the knowledge in mind that most readers don't start at the beginning and go to the end. So they tend to just dip into it. Yeah, they tend to just pick it up every once in a while and like chewing gum, just kind of go random places.
Sure. So that little bit of recap is intentional.
Yeah. And the trick is to try to recap it in a way so that it's not too repetitive in the way it recaps things. But the fact that it seems a little chronological, and that it is a little chronological, is kind of like an inevitable byproduct of the fact that you're ranking them in importance, because, obviously, to build a house, you need the foundation, and so the foundation becomes the most important part of the house. So, so naturally, Catwoman and Joker are going to be more important than, like, Bane and Poison Ivy.
Fair enough.
And then after a certain point, maybe after, like, 30 or 40 topics, then it becomes a little more of a challenge, I guess, because then you're kind of like, well, is Penguin or Riddler more important?
Well, that was actually that was kind of a follow up for me. So you're trying to get down to 100, and that makes that makes sense to me. Like you try to make sure that no one's lost if this is where they led up to you. Like if they just pulled this thing, if I pulled this book off the shelf and thought, man, I love the animated series, and pulled it up, I could kind of get some sense of the history. Or if I just pulled Batman 66 because that's my demographic and pulled it up, like I've got some semblance of where it came from. But you're also trying to get down to like 100 things. What kind of criteria lead you to 100 things? I mean, there's far more than 100 things. That's got to be a little bit painful.
Oh God. Oh yeah, it's totally painful. The Superman book was, I don't know, a different kind of pain, because that was more like there was a little more scrounging there, because after Brainiac and Metallo, his rogues gallery is just
reaching for like where's major rogue. Yeah, like Batman has the richest rogue. Like, you could do 100 just the rogues gallery and probably make it work.
Yeah.
I mean,
like Superman. After Brainiac, Doomsday, and Lex Luthor, you've got a series of rocks.
Yeah.
Right.
So, even your name, like, if we all sat here right now, we might be able to come up with like a dozen majors, and then after that, it's scrapping. But still, you didn't have to like go like, I think you maybe have 8 or 10-ish. Just guessing, but 8 or 10 like villain chapters, I'll call it, in this.
Yeah, I think I remember. I think it might have been like 12, but I don't know.
I want to say it's less than 15.
Because I remember it was less than 15. I think it was like between 10 and 15, maybe. I don't know, but
still, like you didn't rely on each villain to fill out the book. It's clearly like you had 100 Batman things of importance. So like, what gets left behind in a process like that?
Well, like towards the bottom of the list is when it starts, it becomes more and more of a, like I said, a challenge, because it's like, okay, it's really debatable whether the Mad Hatter is like a more important villain than the ventriloquist, Scarface and the ventriloquist.
Sure.
But the Mad Hatter made the cut and Scarface and ventriloquist didn't. That was really, that was just how I went with it, but I can, easily see somebody arguing that the reverse should be true. That, and I wouldn't deny that for a second. Obviously, if they put the Joker after the, the Mad Hatter, then something's wrong. But, but once you get into that stuff, but it's like, yeah, sure. I mean, Zaz and the ventriloquist. I mean, in a way, it's like, should the Court of Owls be in there and not the ventriloquist? But but then it kind of becomes a thing. Well, the Court of Owls it's not just a rogue. It's also the defining story of Snyder and Capullo, which is like, arguably one of the great runs.
Like a 4-volume
great writer art. Yeah. So at a certain point, it's like, with Neil Adams or Marshall Rogers and Steve Englehart, it's like they'll get a chapter, but it's like, I don't know if Snyder and Capullo, they just haven't been around long enough so that they're of the same legendary status that they get a chapter. But the Court of Owls feels like, that's something that, fans should know about that. That, if you only read one in continuity Batman story from the last 10 years, there's a fair argument that you would go with the Court of Owls.
That's fair. Similarly, like, you do include Gotham, like, and our overall opinion of it has been it's hit or miss. Do you have a take on it?
Yeah, that's the opinion of most people, I think.
Yeah, That looks like that was your take of it too.
yeah. It and I think part of the reason, and I realized there could be more Gotham in the book. Like I could have probably had interviews with some of the cast, because I have interviewed the cast for my various outlets, but it just feels like a show that's still in develop. If at least at the time of the writing, it felt like a show that was still in development, and that it could very quickly solidify into something, but it wasn't there yet. And so it felt a little bit awkward to be like offering some sort of judgment or even attempt to offer a blanket statement on a show that is like so rapidly evolving and changing. And also the argument there is that if you wanted to, you could say it's a Gordon show or a pre-Batman show and not necessarily a Batman show. So yeah, in the end, I felt like there were enough little arguments you could use to like not have more Gotham than is in the book, or to not like make some sort of like blanket judgment on Gotham, because it's it has its flaws, but I think the show also recognizes it has its flaws, and it's constantly trying to like do to try something different, and it's just very erratic in all of this, though. It's not like Game of Thrones, it's not like Walking Dead. It's a very schizophrenic show. It's not unlike The Rogues.
Oh, it's definitely in flux.
Yeah, I think you were right when you were talking about how it like jumps from like 66 Batman to like Burton to Nolan really quickly. It's just trying to grab things stylistically and tonally from all of those different sources, and it's just not its own thing somehow. Yeah.
And yet, like, my sense from the last season and, this coming, or this new season is that it's...
Yeah, what's your take on the premiere?
It's getting better. It's getting closer to being its own thing, or to recognizing what it needs to do to be its own thing.
Yeah. That's the big confusion right now is it pulls from so many things that we're not sure where it's going. Right. And I feel like for a few years we've been waiting to see what they want to finish on. This season might get us there.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's that belief that like with the Joss Whedon shows, that like he really hits his stride when he thinks he's about to be canceled. I feel like that's what Gotham's gonna do now, because their ratings keep dropping. So I feel like they're like, all right, we got to get him in the damn suit. Let's finish this story.
Yeah, they had that in the preseason like teasers. It's obviously part of it. I can see that. Let's take another part of the canon though. All right, so you care if I pull a couple of quotes from you?
No, not at all.
I'm going to pull 3 and just kind of ask you. All right, so Batman 66 is lounge lizard hedonism, beach blanket kitsch, and Elvis movie merriment poured over atomic age gadgetry into a glass of vitamin D. Whole great American milk, pure of heart and twice as groovy. I have.
That might be my favorite line of the book.
It's fantastic.
Oh, thanks. Oh, thanks, guys.
That is, first of all, what I'd call fantastic writing, and second, yeah, that sounds deadly accurate.
Thank you.
So you've got the reason I say care if I read a couple is you've got a couple of series that you're very fond of. Me too. So I'm not. For the children in the 1990s and the new millennium, these series were Batman, but they're unbeholden to any time, existing outside the confines of form and period, perpetual in movement and memory. They elevate an already archetypal character and his world to the purest form, condensing a half-century of comic book stories into one thrilling, coherent narrative, one that's definitive in every way. I don't know if I could agree with every word more than I just heard. And between that and you go between those two, like the 66 series, BTAS in general, and Brave and the Bold. You seem to have a lot of love for those series. Yeah.
They're all great in their own way.
Overall question, what is it that's happening there that makes that so definitive?
Which one?
That's my question.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, I think I used the word definitive to describe BTAS, right? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Definitely with BTAS. And that is, to be sure, like, me and Dave are on board with you. That's our version of Batman. The animated series, that's where it is. Like, I've got a huge amount of love for Brave and the Bold. also have a huge amount of love for like Batman 66 as far as where it was in culture at the moment. But where do you compare?
Do you feel like Brave and the Bold is a marriage of 66 and BTAS?
I think Brave and the Bold is what happens if you make Batman 66 in the 21st century and make the humor written by really good 21st century TV comedy writers. Because it's smart and it's meta and it's, it's replacing the camp with meta and it's replacing the goofiness with wit. And
some of those episodes are absolutely tear-jerking.
For Brave and the Bold.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah. I mean, it's like there are tear-jerking episodes of The Office, right? But overall, you would still probably... Yeah, but you still probably call it a comedy, right?
Sure, yeah.
But
not the last couple of years, but yeah.
Oh, yeah. But you'd still call it a comedy. So I mean, in general, you would probably call Brave and the Bold a comedy, but it's an adventure comedy and it's a darn good one. And there's some tear-jerking episodes there, but I think James Tucker would be the producer creator would probably be the first person to say that in a way they're anomalies. Chill of the Night is one of the most popular and definitely one of the best written. James, it's one of his least favorites though, and that's because he feels like it's such an outlier for the series as a whole that it's it's not really representative of what distinguishes the series, but it's still a very good episode. But I think Brave and the Bold, that's the one that I always point to as the most underrated screen version of Batman.
Absolutely.
I don't think it's definitive. I think BTAS is definitive. I think 66 is a hell of a lot of fun and just a dear, lovely thing. And I think Brave and the Bold is the most underrated because it's anybody you've seen it, it's just
several times.
It does things that no other TV show has done, and it's just extraordinary the way it does it. And my God, that finale is just like it's not just one of the great. I always tell it's
disruptive. It's emotionally disruptive is the word I want to use.
Yeah, and intellectually disruptive.
Yes.
It's incredible. It's not just like I always say this. It's not just one of the great like cartoon series finales or superhero series finales. It is one of the great TV show finales. Like I think it's up there with the final episodes of like Newhart or Star Trek: The Next Generation, and just let's not just end the show. Let's rip it apart and see what makes it work, and then thank you.
Literally rip it apart in the background.
Yeah, I felt like it was.
With,
I was like watching
with
the
soundtrack from the
version
music
of
Meister. The Music Meister episode playing in the background.
Oh right, played on a solo piano. Oh my God,
yeah.
It's just like every little thing about it, and from the bit where Flapper Harley kicks. Oh God, what's his name? The Joker's little sidekick, Gaggy, where she kicks Gaggy off screen. It's just like, holy fuck. I'm sorry. That deserves an F-bomb. It's oh God. And then the casting, it's like, casting Henry Winkler in that. And it's like,
oh God, yes.
God. You're not just literally jumping the shark, but you're paying homage to the very act. Like, and McGinley, yeah.
The wonderful fourth wall work there, which was wonderfully made because it's already a fourth wall character that's kind of bringing us out of this. So to deal with a fourth world problem on top of that was genius.
Right, you found the perfect guest star for this specific
for that specific
story.
instance. Yeah.
Yeah. And it does that throughout its run in a way. But in this case, of course, like all bets are off because they can do anything. So they go with like the character that can do anything.
Sure.
It's amazing.
I love that they so ardently at times make note of the fact that they know what they are and they know that the fans don't like them. Like
right. Oh yeah.
There's a lot of
we know
descriptions about the merchandise and all that in the last little bit.
Well, anything with Batmite, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the luge, the what is it? Yeah. The Bat Turbo luge or whatever. Oh God.
Whatever costume they were wearing for that. Yeah.
The Bat flames on the side.
Sure.
Right. Oh. Oh, so much good stuff. Yeah, it's like, I mean, that's so much a tribute to Paul Dini's writing too, because he's just like, you know, he's that rare dude who's like, he's a smart, educated writer who is also a fan, who also has a love of the character, and he never lets one of those things overshadow the other things. He somehow is able to fuse them all together and create a singular voice that he applies to every one of his scripts, and it's just, oh God, I don't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep, I get you.
You know, if I for some reason, you know, needed to cry and I couldn't summon it within myself, I would watch that final speech by Batman to the children of the world from that final Brave and the Bold episode. I'm gonna start if I don't stop talking about it right now.
And you know James Tucker, you know, although Paul wrote the episode, of course, James Tucker wrote that speech.
That's phenomenal.
Because he wanted that in there, because that was his thing from the beginning. It was just like, and I don't fully know why. I think it goes back to James's childhood and how much Batman meant to him. And I think it was just like, but he was adamant. He was like, we have to address this. Batman has to say goodbye to the kids. And so he took it upon himself to write that little speech. And Diedrich Bader didn't even know that. When I interviewed him, he didn't know James had written that part, and I told him, and he was like, "Oh wow, I never knew that." But yeah, James did that part, and Paul did everything else. So yeah, it's a great episode.
That's great stuff.
God, really
all right, so it is safe to say that the animated series is your chosen copy, though, right? It's your chosen version.
That's the desert island version.
Yeah,
that's the version you take with you if you can only take one.
All right.
I mean,
yeah.
in your book, you specifically call out Ephraim Zimbalist and Hamill as being definitive, and not to mention Conroy.
Yeah. I think really, yeah. Because as much as I like, you know, Bale's Batman, I don't think he's definitive in the same way that Conroy's Batman is. And when we say Conroy's Batman, of course, it's not just Conroy's Batman; it's Conroy's and Tim's Batman, and you know, and the show's writers. But yeah, like it's very easy to play Conroy's voice in your head when you read almost any Batman comic book.
Yeah,
you know, whether it's Dick Sprang or Frank Miller or Scott Snyder or whoever or Grant Morrison, you can put if you choose to, you can turn on Kevin Conroy's voice.
Actually, you bring up one of the situations where it's strangest for me to like hear Conroy over some of Grant Morrison stuff, because he goes pretty far sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's like. But then, like, I would never, I don't know, but he works in Arkham, in the Arkham games, so it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean Grant goes far?
Yeah, Grant Morrison.
Oh, yeah.
No,
yeah,
it incorporates it beautifully.
Totally.
But,
Yeah.
You know what's weird, though, to me is that, like, Conroy, specifically Conroy, Hamill's, and that original TAS cast, their voices live so ardently in my head now that even when I hear them come back and do the characters, sometimes, adapting material that's like The Killing Joke, for instance. I was sitting there going, "This is all right," but I mean, this isn't how Hamill and Conroy said it in my head.
Right.
So it's just,
when you read it in their voices.
Yeah. So how much do you feel, if any, that subsequent series in the same TAS canon, how much would you say they detract from the animated series? Because like the animated series lives in that like timeless reality, but something like Justice League and specifically Batman Beyond make it seem so linear, so, you know, modern day and futuristic that it kind of in some ways pulls me out of like Batman watching in this highly tech car watching a black and white screen in the Batmobile. Mm-hmm. It kind of pulls me out of that. Like, how do you feel about that?
Well, you know, I feel like they're almost like building toys, you know? It's like, if you want to, in your mind, if you want to add Batman Beyond on top of the continuity, you can. In your mind, if you want to add Justice League onto the continuity, you can. Or, you know, you can kind of view them as separate play sets.
Yeah.
And, you know, and just have fun in those worlds as if they were separate worlds. You know, because I think they are all fun. But yeah, I see the point where, like, especially with Batman Beyond, where it's a little bit like, it makes, it's kind of like Force Awakens, I guess, where, you know, it starts out in like, oh, Han and Leia are divorced and, like, and the Empire's still in power. So it's kind of BTAS becomes sad when you watch Batman Beyond, because it's like, oh, he didn't really help things all that much, did he? Because, even if the Joker's dead, he had more influence over the citizens than Batman did, because he's got all these little like gangs running around like cults, in his honor. But it's a fun series, and it's a fun kind of futuristic series, and it's a good like teen series too. It's like it's like kind of like a smart version of Smallville in a way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it doesn't detract from the original series to me, because there's just so much of it. It's almost like Hobbit and Lord of the Rings and Silmarillion, where you just you can jump in and just enjoy one, or you can enjoy all of them. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just grateful they all
as canon.
I'm sorry, say it again.
I accept them all as canon. Like Batman Beyond to me is the perfect ending for Batman, because it's sort of like Angel. I don't know if you watched Buffy and Angel, but like with Angel, the point wasn't that they win. The point was that they never give up.
Right.
They know that they're not
fighting.
Yeah, it's never going to be like fixed. It's just that they're doing the right thing. And I feel like that's Bruce's
that's how they
whole
go out on the screen,
purpose.
is ready to fight the next battle, but you don't know what happens.
Exactly, yeah.
Which may be why Dark Knight Rises bothers me so much sometimes, but because I feel like
oh sure.
Bruce was like, no, okay, I don't need women. I'm not Bruce Wayne, I'm Batman.
I'll have a latte minus the side of crime.
Yeah, I don't need justice. I just need a nice biscotti.
Nice French press.
That's right. Oh, hi, Alfred.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Yeah. Well, I kind of think of Dark Knight Rises like an imaginary story to some extent. It's like, it's a what if tale if you want it to be, It's a well-made what if tale if you don't like, it as a concluding chapter for that trilogy. But it's a hell of a better film than X-Men and The Last Stand or Spider-Man 3 or most any other superhero trilogy capper.
I'd agree with that. No, I mean, Dave and I have had our numerous differences with Dark Knight Rises, but yeah, I actually agree. It's
certainly a flawed film, but it's a very interesting, noble attempt.
I wouldn't if given the option, if someone said, "Hey, do you like?" Because we've bitched about it on the show a lot, but if someone said, "Would you like to just like shoo that out of existence?" I'd be like, "No, let's keep it." But
we need to play with this for a minute.
I mean, Bane's performance, Tom Hardy's performance alone is, pretty, necessary. I think the world would be worse off without Tom Hardy's Bane in it.
Yeah. I liked Tom Hardy's voice. I just it's more where Bane ends up that bothers me about the film.
Yeah, I should I guess I should specify the voice. If only for the memes and the parodies it generated, and
that alone was world changing, which is good in its own way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It inspired a lot of creativity.
It really did. Everyone kind of got to play with that one.
The high point of Chris Kattan's career, I think, just about.
It's probably Yep. That's...
To that I say, who? I'm kidding. I know who he is. So, do you have something?
I have a couple things. Go first.
No, go. By all means.
All right, damn, you put me on the spot. Fine.
On the spot.
Damn it. All right, so you mentioned Mask of the Phantasm as the best Batman script.
Film script, yeah.
I agree, but just wondering if you could kind of pinpoint. There are some obvious scripts out there now that involve the Batman. So, yeah, if you could maybe elaborate on some of the points that make it, I don't know, more tailored to the character.
Yeah, sure. Well, it gives you a bunch of different things that it scratches a lot of itches, I think, that Batman fans have, while at the same time telling an original story and treating it with the respect it deserves. They're playing, like, for one thing, he's got the best love interest in any of the films in that one.
And the best response to it in general.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How does what's the phrase? I never thought I would be in love or something.
No.
I never planned this to happen or something, or never. I can't remember the exact line.
He's talking to his parents at his parents' grave. He says,
I didn't count on being happy.
I never expected to be happy or something. Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah. She's the perfect foil for him in that, she's kind of like the best femme fatale that any of the films have had. And in addition to that, it plays with time and chronology in a way that few films do because it's so difficult to do that. Films like Citizen Kane and Pulp Fiction do that kind of storytelling where they, and Nolan's films do to a certain extent. I mean, just in general, not necessarily the Batman trilogy, but where they play with like, the storytelling and the flashbacks, and they weave them in and out in such a way that, they're comprehensible and yet they still move. The story has a driving linear momentum. And the remarkable thing I think about that is that it wasn't written by one guy. That it was really a group effort, and all of the prominent TV show writers contributed. And it's really just kind of, I think, a good example of like the studio system at its best, where, they had a unit in place that just functioned as this like perfect machine, and each person knew what they did best, and the guy in charge, Alan Burnett, knew what they did best and made sure that that's what they were given to do, and just that, and that, and everything just kind of, Paul Dini does the Joker parts, and Alan does the romance, and, and it really comes together quite well in that regard. And thank God it's finally on Blu-ray, and thank God that the whole animated series has just been announced on Blu-ray.
Yeah. I'd say like the first 5 sentences you said in response to Jason's question should just be on the back of the Blu-ray.
Oh, thanks.
I don't think WB would
have it's like a lot of the great films. It really was kind of an accident because it wasn't supposed to happen that way. It was just, I think it was supposed to be originally direct-to-video, and then it became theatrical, and then it was like a theatrical with a limited budget, and then became a theatrical where they were going to give it more money. And, the only thing that didn't work is the marketing campaign, because at the time Warner Brothers, they had no idea how to market a film like that. And so it died, after like one weekend it was gone from theaters. But I still remember seeing that in theaters and when it came out, and it came out, I believe, was it Christmas Day or New Year's Day? One of those.
It was Christmas, I think.
Yeah.
Christmas Day, yeah. About like a year and a few odd months after the animated series debuted. And it was, I still remember going through like an ice storm in Philadelphia to the theater out in Painter's Crossing with my brother to see that, and sitting down and just being like, holy crap, they just animated like a cocktail party like on the big screen. Like, this is really weird, like, because you're so used to, at that point, you're so used to jokes every second or musical sequences every 5 minutes. This is after Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and all that stuff. And it was rare that you would get something like Akira playing in theaters at the time too. So that was a bit of a game changer in its way. It just it took time, I think, to find an audience because nobody knew about it because of the marketing. Yeah,
that was a pretty big shame. Like,
yeah.
I didn't even get to go see it in the theater when I was a kid. I wanted to, and we just didn't get it out in time because it just went away quickly.
Yeah, it was only a couple weeks and it was gone.
Yeah. It was really impressive. It was just like, whoa, there's like, when it goes to the World's Fair, and then just little things that you don't even get at first. Like when he first sees the prototype for the Batmobile, and and it's just like a throwaway shot where it just looks like he's looking like around. And he's this is a cool thing, and then later on it's but then it gets even more interesting than that, because it's like, the 1966 Batmobile was also a custom car, or was also a prototype that Chuck Barris found at like a show, and he like remembered that prototype, and then when they needed the Batmobile for the 66 show, he went back in his mind to that thing and used it. There's a lovely little bit of meta to that I don't even know is intentional on the part of the writers, but there nevertheless.
So very nice.
So shall we talk about the current movies?
Well, I had a question.
Sure.
That might lead up to it. generally your book history is very deeply DC oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Is that more like reflective or deliberate?
I've had some opportunities to do books on Marvel characters, but for some reason they don't. I don't know why. It's not intentional. They just don't seem to offer to me individual characters quite as much. Soil, if you will, for tilling. You know, I mean, like when you write about Superman, Batman,
not as fertile.
To write about everything, or not as fertile. Thank you. Yeah. You get to write about everything if you write about Superman and Batman, because it's like they represent 100 years of American pop culture. Almost. Sure. So, and they're interesting in and of themselves, but they're also interesting as a reflection of, you know, society's, you know, perception of itself and you know, its dreams at any given decade. And with the Marvel characters, I don't know, for some reason they always felt a little more contextual to me. It always felt like, you know, Spider-Man functioned best as a teenager, and you know, and Cap functioned best as a guy who recently came out of suspended animation, and you know, they didn't seem to be quite as like, I don't know why. I don't know. I still feel like if they ever do the right way to do a Fantastic Four movie is to make it a period film and set it in the 1960s and have like Frank Sinatra music playing on the soundtrack, and you know, have all the guys wear hats and all the ladies wear like pencil skirts and pillbox hats, and
I've been saying that for years.
Yeah. Oh, like, really?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to see the 1960s Fantastic Four. I don't know how it fit into the MCU if they did there, but
everything else went tits up. This might work. Who knows?
I don't know, but yeah, it's just the Marvel characters always seem to be contextual, to be very much of their times and eras, and the DC characters always seem to transcend that. They always seem to be, you know, adaptable to so many different eras.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It's just, I mean, it's because they're more archetypal and because they're more primal in a way, because they're not, you know, some people would argue that their weaknesses are that they weren't designed, most of them weren't designed with personalities the way Marvel's characters were. But I actually see that as a bit of a strength, because it allows different creators to give them different personalities or interpretations, you know, over time. So
yeah, I mean, one of the great ways you make an icon is to make them vague.
Yeah.
So that people can kind of interpret it the way they want.
Yeah, and project themselves into it. You know, like give them just enough to, you know, to inspire them, and then let them take it from there.
Yeah, I was just listening to a podcast called Imaginary Worlds, and he was talking about the music of world building, and he was interviewing a band. I think they're God, what was their name? I can't remember. Vertigo Drift or Virtual Drift, something. But they're doing a concept album where their main protagonist is they're leaving it gender fluid. It's like so people can just relate to it however they want. Mm-hmm. It's like I don't know. Something about that made me think of Batman a few days ago when I heard it, because it was like obviously Batman is a man, but you know there's just so much you can just key into and make up, no matter what era you kind of go into. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that right. I don't know.
Yeah, it's probably and that's probably also why, you know, BTAS is considered definitive by so many different people, because, you know, just visually at least, you know, in a way it's the most broadly drawn screen version of Batman, but you know, because of that, it allows viewers to kind of almost like fill in the details in their minds even as they're watching it.
Mm-hmm. So, how do you? Well, go ahead, Jason.
Well,
I feel like I keep doing that to you.
We'll continue that tradition. So, just wanted to gauge your state on this. You mentioned like Chris McKay's Nightwing film, Whedon doing Batgirl, Gotham City's Sirens. That's all in print now, and you actually said, I wrote down this just to give you context, as of this writing, but like mentioning the DCEU films going forward, did that give you pause, actually putting that in print?
In what sense?
Because they're...
because it's so up in the air.
Yeah.
All the time.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Well, you know, it's I don't know. There's two schools of thought. One is that you write for the ages, and the other is that you write for your time. And
you did seem to write as recently as you possibly could, but then even I like the sentence "as of this writing."
Mm. Yeah, because it could change.
Yeah,
sure.
Absolutely good.
Yeah, and but I think it was important just to have a snapshot of like where we are at this point. And, certainly with Whedon's Batgirl, I think that's whether that gets made with him, whether that whatever form it should take, the mere fact that came to be a possibility is noteworthy, because in a way she kind of represents, I think, more than just she represents in a certain way to me more than Supergirl does, although there's more like history sometimes to delve into with Supergirl a little bit. If you go back to the 50s and 60s, Barbara really didn't get her own kind of like comic, her own really good solid recurring comic until much later, but she to me represents the example, the idea, the concept that anybody can be Batman, which I think is a really important concept. Because it applies, like you were saying, to gender fluidity, to, crosses all kinds of boundaries, racial, cultural, whatever.
Sure.
And it, so she's, that to me is the thing, where it's just like, and also the fact that she's not defined necessarily by tragedy, at least in her original incarnation. Because it almost like, she almost kind of eliminates the last vestige that could separate the reader from Batman, where it's like, well, my parents weren't, murdered in front of my eyes. So just as a concept alone. Yeah,
she's one of the characters that like takes up the mantle under very philosophical kind of circumstances.
Yeah. In a way, she's like kind of like a prototype of Dark Knight Rises, the concept there. Or, and to a certain extent, the concept of that trilogy in general, is that anybody can be Batman, or that, that Batman isn't a guy, he's an ideal and a philosophy and everything.
Yeah.
And Barbara might be the first thing in the comics continuity that really kind of embraces that, where it's like, it kind of hints at legacy and at this movement, at a movement or a cause that goes on beyond him, in her.
Yeah. So. I always think of like Tim Drake and Barbara in like the last, the last third at least of No Man's Land, kind of working out the coding on how do I put it, like the pieces of land. Anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But like those two working together on just like a coding problem makes sense to me in that capacity.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Yeah. Also in the Beware the Batman, she's good. Her interaction with Robin is good in that. In the season, I think it's just one season where she gets featured prominently in almost. Am I thinking Beware? No, I'm sorry. I get them confused with Beware the Batman and The Batman. I'm thinking The Batman.
Yeah, right.
Right. Yes, that's right. Her interaction with Robin, that's pretty cool. With the season that she's prominent.
I got super excited for a second. I was like, did Beware the Batman have seasons I didn't know about?
No. I wish.
I was actually liked that show.
Tara's good. As Barbara once more in that. There's some some stuff. But
man, you said Barbara didn't watch her parents be murdered in front of her, and that made me think, would it be awesome if we had a story at some point where Barbara becomes a Batman villain because, in a way, Batman has been murdering Gordon in front of her all these years, like, slowly, like, whittling away at his self-esteem, making him a shell of a man, like, making him doubt himself, like, you need me, Jim.
Oh, that's a really good idea.
That'd be a fun take.
You probably should keep that to yourself and pitch it to DC.
Nah. They'll just steal it from me.
No point in being coy.
Not if Paul Levitz was in charge. Paul was very good about about taking care of his creators.
No.
That's good.
I'm sure you guys have heard the story about Len Wein, right? About him and Lucius Fox.
I think I have.
Okay.
That sounds familiar. Tell the story for the listeners, if you don't.
So it was that Paul was, pretty knowledgeable about the company's history, and including its, some of its more distasteful history. And he was always adamant that all of the creators under him get credit for their creations in some form or another. And he had them always, like, I don't know what the exact form was that they would, or the exact procedure they would go through when it came to, like, registering their characters or copywriting or whatever, But Len was doing, like, the first Lucius Fox story or something, or he had just done it. And Paul was like, okay, now, make sure you put your name down as having created Lucius Fox. And Len's just like, what are you talking about? He's like, it's just some guy in a business suit who I, made up for this one story or something. It's just, I don't know if he'll ever be in it again or something. And Paul's just like, trust me, put it down. And Len did, and consequently, Len said he wound up making so much more money off of Lucius Fox than he ever did Wolverine or Swamp Thing. It's just ridiculous.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
I feel bad. That's actually in there, and I recognized it, but I couldn't recall it. But sure enough,
my memory's
it's covered
terrible.
in the book.
Oh, good. For a second, I couldn't remember.
I looked it up while he was talking. I was like, that sounds incredibly familiar, but it's in there.
I assumed it was. I can't remember everything. And I don't feel bad. He didn't remember if it was in there. So
I don't remember what I had for breakfast.
All right, so you have a take on what Marvel and DC are as far as in the movies, with who's doing it best, or do you think what are your thoughts on the MCU? What are your thoughts on the DCEU? Just broadly, as broadly or as in depth as you like.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit unfair that they're compared as much as they are, because
I agree.
They are a different beast, and the general public doesn't know that, nor should they, nor would they have reason to. Marvel is a studio that does nothing but make superhero movies. So whether you like them or not, they have become very good at producing superhero movies. Because that's all they do. They specialize in much the same way that departments or segments of various studios in the golden age of Hollywood would specialize.
Sure.
The Arthur Freed unit at MGM in the early 50s, all they did was make musicals. The same team went from Singing in the Rain to The Bandwagon to American Paris to Brigadoon, whatever. That's all they did. So they got real good at making musicals. And Warner Brothers is a studio that does lots of different things, and they don't have a studio that just makes superhero movies. They have a comic book company they own that's kind of a holding company for licenses, and then they have different filmmakers they work with, but they don't have a team. They don't have an army that is designed to do one thing. So it's no surprise that they're not as consistently, they haven't produced as much or as, of the same consistency as Marvel has. And that being said, they, seem to be learning a little bit from some of their missteps, and, the mere fact that they got Whedon to succeed Snyder is, obviously, a step in the right direction. If you're going to replace him with anyone, and it's a Justice League movie, sure, replace him with the guy who made Avengers.
It's not a step backward, for God's sake.
No. And by all accounts, he's not just doing touch-up. He's really kind of like resculpting the thing. As far as the character stuff goes, my impression is that the action stuff has already been mostly shot and staged and canned and everything, and that Whedon is doing all the character development. So that's a good move. And then some of the other stuff, I don't quite understand. They seem to be complicating things a little bit with this whole idea of like, we have continuity superhero films, we have uncontinuity it's I don't know. It almost seems to be like letting general audiences in on like business meetings that are like that aren't. It seems like they need to kind of like iron a few things out before they start announcing. but
well, I don't think they have announced most of that. I think all they've really done is damage control. I mean, we cover this stuff, all the time, and it's just always like leaks, and then Jeff Johns going, well, it's not like that. Please stop saying this.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, all the potential's there, I mean, Gal's a great Wonder Woman, and I think, and I think Ben has the potential to be a good Batman. I mean, he's a fine Batman. I think he has the potential to star in a good Batman solo film, I guess is what I'm saying. So it's just a question, I guess, of the studio trying to, like, hire the right people for the right job and get out of their way. That's, kind of what every studio needs to do. And it's hard to do when you have so much, so much bureaucracy as Warner Brothers does. But hey, the law of averages says that if you make 20 superhero movies, you gotta have 2 great ones in there, because it's really hard to make them all disappointing. Yeah. So,
I am somewhat, like, as much as I've had, I've taken great issues with Man of Steel in places, and took some issue with a few things in Batman v Superman. Like the Ultimate Cut a lot more, but, I kind of feel like I don't understand how, Man of Steel was so divisive, and one of the biggest problems is, like, Superman snapped a dude's neck in the end. That's not Superman. How do you follow that up with, oh yeah, we're going to have Batman kill 41 people? Right. It's a little weird. But at this point, I was just like, no, screw it. We're doing Grant Morrison. All versions are valid. Let's see where this goes. I want to see the end of this.
Right. Kind of want to see how this story ends. Yeah. Well, Man of Steel was just remarkable for being a darker film than any Wolverine film, Batman film, or Daredevil film made up to that point. It's just like, how do you make a Superman film that's darker than all those guys? It's just amazing. Even the way it's shot, it's just like, it reminded me of, like, it's shot like a horror movie. Like, so much of it is shot like a Cronenberg movie, like an early Cronenberg movie or something. It's just it's strange. But,
well, I can appreciate the notion of trying to, like, I'm not a big fan of David Goyer. I do like the concept of trying to figure out what a hopeful character like Superman looks like in the cynical day that we live in. I think my biggest problem with that was not just that Paul Kent was a total douchebag and jerk, but but that I kind of really wanted to see, like, the full extent of that. Like, Paul Kent kept talking about, like, oh, you don't know what they'll do. They'll do awful stuff. Well, so far they haven't really done anything to Superman. Not really. I mean, Fox News had a day with him. They complained about him on the television. That's all that we really saw in BVS. I don't know. Do you think that? Let's see. You pointed out Bruce tells Diana in BVS, "We can do better. We have to." Do you think that was something of a mission statement for the DC Cinematic Universe going forward? Intentionally, do you think Zack Snyder was, albeit with less humor, trying to make Man of Steel and BVS a deconstruction of the violent and cynical edge comics adopted after Dark Knight Returns, like you talked about in your Dark Knight Returns chapter? Like, do you think that they're pushing towards comic book movies, or how dark and gritty we started to believe they had to be, and kind of deconstructing that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying.
Where are we going, Joe?
I don't know if... Yeah, I just don't know if
or do you just think he was like, screw it, this will be cool?
I don't know. If anybody was deconstructing anything at that point, it might have been Goyer, because I just don't... I think most of what's going on in Zach's mind sometimes, I think, is like, boy, I really want to get back and play Madden football in my office. But no, I don't know. That's terrible. But
that could be fair.
He's instinctual. He's not really. I don't know. He doesn't really think things through sometimes like that. That seems more like maybe a Goyer type thing. But yeah, it could be. It could have been a little bit of Goyer kind of offering an apology and a way forward. It wouldn't surprise me. And I think it will, like, they are going to lighten up. The question is like, they need to just make sure when they lighten up, they don't go to the opposite extreme, in other words, make a Batman and Robin to apologize for Batman Returns,
No camp.
Yeah.
That should be outlawed.
Or at least, not in this version, maybe. Yeah. But, yeah, so so I don't know. The night is young. I mean, there's just a lot that's going to be going on, coming out, and a lot of directions can go. Jason Momoa is a ton of fun in real life. Actually, they all are. They're all nice to interview. I spoke with the whole cast a few months back about Justice League.
Nice.
And they're a lot like their characters. It's kind of funny. They're all a lot like their characters. You probably interview them yourself.
Like a product of casting kind of situation.
Yeah, because usually, in film, you get actors and you hire actors to play roles, and they're rarely like their characters. But then in TV, when you do a TV show, you often hire actors who are like their characters with the knowledge that they're going to have to live inside that skin for years to come,
7
perhaps.
to 10 years, if all goes well.
Yeah. But in this case, it seems like they got actors, probably because they're signing them on for multi-films and all that stuff, that they're really like their characters. And Ezra Miller's a lot like, Barry, and Jason Momoa is a lot like his version of Aquaman, which, hopefully is a lot like Brave and the Bold's Aquaman. And because that's
hoping real hard, buddy.
Yeah.
Far and away the definitive screen Aquaman, like by any yardstick. But that being said, I was shocked by one thing Ezra mentioned in our interview. I think I can talk about this because it has nothing to do with the film itself. Because he was, we were just talking to him a little bit about comics, if they read comics and what comics they might have read, and that sort of thing. And Ezra said something like, "Well, right now for me, it's all about Gardner Fox." And I was just like, what? like that's awesome, but where did that come from? Because it's just like, you can't possibly think that would impress me, because nobody really cares. Nobody who's doing interviews with actors cares about Gardner Fox. And very few of today's fans even care about Gardner Fox. So the mere fact that you drop that name means that you actually are reading early Justice League comics right now and getting off on them, which is pretty cool. I still hate the fact that they're dressing him in armor, but, his heart's in the right place.
The people who are pissed off about the armor, which, by the way, doesn't look like a Power Ranger and it doesn't look that bad, it's fine. Dude, Ezra Miller has been dropping names like that since he was cast. It's clear just how excited he is to play this role. Yeah. And I wish everybody'd get off of his dick about this thing. He's Flash already.
He is. Yeah, he is.
He is.
Trying
to be the Flash's biggest fan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's perfectly cast for that film. And I at least that version of the Flash.
I really do.
Yeah.
I mean, before we ever even saw BVS, that cat was in an interview talking about how he hopes that one day he and Grant Gustin meet in the Speed Force on film. And I'm like, what the hell? This is exactly what I wanted.
Right, totally. Yes. Yeah. Embrace your legacy, embrace your lineage, hug, but just, get all those universes.
Right.
The other thing I think that, who was it now? Was it Jason? I think it was Jason. Not Jason. Ray was talking about the cast, and he said something where he was like, I think I mentioned how Gail and Ben were the parents of the group. Their characters were, in this film sort of functioning as the mother and father of the Justice League.
Sure.
And Ray, remarked, and they're kind of like that in real life too. Mom's really nice and Dad's always grumpy.
Yeah, that one showed up around.
They're sitting right there.
That was good.
But
that was really good.
So,
nice.
I take it you've seen the brand new Justice League trailer that just dropped yesterday?
Yeah, it looks enjoyable. The bat signal bit is great.
Oh, it's absolutely great. Did you kind of feel like I felt like it was Zack Snyder visuals with Whedon dialogue?
Yes, and somebody putting several light filters over the Snyder footage.
Yeah.
Several yellow filters.
You may have a point there.
Joy filter. Is there a joy filter? Because it looked like they put a joy filter over it too.
A joy filter.
I have a slight suspicion that he erred on the side of joy, and Whedon brought it out. Like maybe I want
to
have this here, and did a different take, and then Whedon kind of went, yeah, we're gonna use that one.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it all hangs together.
Yeah,
that I could not.
The ultimate hope.
I don't think I could actually put that better. Justice League, November 2017. Hope it all hangs together.
But you know what? That's exactly what I said about the Avengers, though. Like, I fully, and a lot of us did, I think, fully expect that to be just a complete train wreck. To the point where even when people started saying it was good, I didn't believe them, because I was just like,
no way.
How do you?
They didn't pull this off.
How do you keep all these balls? Yeah, that's ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense. There's no, they. Yeah. But then, like, stumbling out of that, and even then after seeing the film, I remember walking out of the parking lot and turning to my wife and saying something like, I think that was a really enjoyable movie.
I think they did it. I'm confused.
I think they actually.
I think you stumbled
upon it off.
I think you stumbled upon the phrase "stumbling out of that."
Yeah, it's just like, and the shawarma machine just
you can't leave with the clear head.
Because
Yeah,
you can't leave with a clear head. Yeah, but it's just like, and the shawarma scene was just like great because that was almost like Whedon just kind of like winking at you, being like, see what I did?
Yeah. By the way, I was here.
Because
that was his Gilroy.
Yeah, exactly. Totally, it was his branding. Yeah. So great. Because like when I saw that scene, I remember I wasn't watching that scene. I was watching a discussion that that Joss had in a executive's office, where he basically said, and I just remember in my head, I knew this is definitely how it played out. The executive looks at him and he goes, "How do you want to end it?" And then he goes, what does Robert think of this? And then I just remember, and I can see Joss being, oh, Robert loves the idea. And then the executive going, all right, okay, good. It's just like...
We're going to end with shawarma. We're good. Everyone's involved.
I don't think I thought that Avengers was going to be a train wreck. I thought it can't be worse than the Incredible Hulk.
Well, I thought it would turn out to be like a mediocre Ocean's 11, where it would be like a bunch of like kind of characters, all kind of thrown together, and it's fun just to see them. But at best, it'll just be fun to see them. But as to whether or not we're going to get a great movie out of it, I don't know. Yeah,
I mean, when they had announced after Iron Man, I was dubious through Iron Man. I was like, I like Robert Downey Jr., but I mean, can they really do something with Iron Man? And then they were like, we're gonna do Thor and Cap, and I'm like, really? All right, nobody knows who those people are really, but all right.
Right.
You see how right I was, so whatever.
Yeah.
What does your wife think about all this? Is she a fan proper, or does she just sort of put up with it, or
yeah?
How would you categorize it?
I am the luckiest man in the world because my wife is a PhD art historian student. She finishes her degree in June. She studies Northern Renaissance Italian art, and yet she has it in her heart to not only enjoy pop culture, but to kind of like, view it as her drug of choice. And
awesome.
And I know that is a rare thing, and I am grateful for that every day. Yeah, I mean, I don't know too many people who, after a day of like studying Bruegel would just be like, oh, I can't wait for tonight's Supergirl, but she's like that, and she actually has kept up to date more than I have. Like I think she's seen in every episode so far of the Arrowverse. I still haven't watched a lot of last season of Legends of Tomorrow, but
oof, that's a tough one. Though.
That's a common affliction. Don't feel bad.
I've heard, yeah. But yeah, no, I'm super lucky. She's totally into the Marvel stuff and the DC stuff, and she doesn't read as many comics. She didn't grow up with comics and all that, but as far as screen superheroes go, she's way into it.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I am equally lucky in that regard. So I feel you. I was actually worried for a long time that I was gonna have to like keep all of my stuff like in a closet underneath the staircase or something one day.
Oh. Right. Well, that was one of the things. I have to tell you that. Well, the first time when my wife and I were dating, the first time she slept over, right? I turned the lights off in my room. And when she came in, and I was just like, I just want to leave the lights off for now. And she's like, why? Is there something you don't want me to see? And I'm like, not tonight. Like, you can look.
Maybe tomorrow.
You can, like,
Let me close the door
so
first,
the next day,
we'll talk.
Exactly. So the next day she wakes up, and there's this, and it's the first thing she sees is this huge, original Return of the Jedi poster over my bed, and she looks at it, and she looks at me, and she goes, "Oh, I thought it was going to be porn." So yeah, I'm really lucky.
Thought that was a classic Farrah Fawcett I was dealing with in the morning. This is much better.
Back in college, I brought a girl to my apartment, and my room was just decked out wall to wall, no negative space on the walls. It hasn't really changed very much as far as that's concerned, but just Star Trek plastered everywhere. Batman. I had Magneto Marvel Legends figures hanging from the ceiling, fighting Iron Man, they had fishing line, attached and hanging from the ceilings. I had just crap everywhere.
You had dioramas. You had original dioramas. That's impressive.
Yeah, I like my action figures and stuff. And the girl walks in, looks around, and I was just waiting on it, because she's one of those kind of trendy people who are she's got to be keeping up appearances. She walked in and looked around. She went, "Oh, you're one of those guys." And I was like, "Yep." And she turned around and walked out.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh. I'm sorry.
That'll happen.
Oh, that was fine. I was like, it's best to rip that Band-Aid off right
saved a
quick.
lot of time.
It's true. Yeah. In hindsight, I guess it's kind of a gift. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
I have. Dave has told me that story before, and I have to admire his perseverance. He didn't turn the other way and run. No, that was just like, okay, bitch, that's fine. You do you, I'll do me.
Yeah, I've always been that dude for some reason. Nope, I'm reading my comics. They're called action figures. They're not dolls, Grandpa.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that means I don't get inheritance now. I'm just kidding about that. That's not true. That didn't happen. But that part.
Right. Yeah, no, if money's on the table, then, okay, maybe that Return of the Jedi poster is coming down. I don't know. But
Yeah. Jason, you have anything else?
I don't know if I do. I don't know. Yeah, I think we've covered it.
I
think we've covered a lot of it. Do you hear? Hold on. Do you hear pages flipping in the background? That's research.
Yeah, it sounds very professional.
Yeah. I think those pages have been consumed.
I don't know. It was a little Rush Limbaugh. You know how he crumples the papers and stuff. I kind of expect you to go on a conservative rant now.
I can for show, but come on. I really feel like talking about the wall at the moment.
Oh gosh. Well, what else we got? I don't think I have anything else.
I don't know if I do.
You have any other thing?
No, I think
to
I
say.
I think we've. I think we've covered everything I had down at least.
By the way, when will this be broadcast? Do you guys know yet, or roughly?
About 3 hours, probably.
Oh, seriously? Oh, wow.
Maybe. I don't know.
Oh, I didn't realize you guys. But you guys get it up usually within the week or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, it's getting harder with age.
Yeah.
Sorry. I had to do it. I'm sorry. But yeah, no, it'll probably be up tomorrow.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, then, do you mind if I mention where I'll be doing signings for the next couple weeks?
Oh, do it, man.
Go.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Shoot.
Okay, cool. Because some of them are still being confirmed, but the ones that are confirmed are Showcase Comics. It's located in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, which is just outside of Philadelphia. That's Wednesday, October 18th. 3 days after the book is published, because I think it's officially published on the 15th, although, those things are always fluid, and it's already starting to show up in Barnes & Nobles and whatnot, or certainly on Amazon. And then after that, November 1st, day after Halloween, at Meltdown Comics on Sunset in Los Angeles. I'll be doing signing there. which is pretty cool to me because that's where Joss Whedon buys his comics. And is also the home of the Nerdist podcast, several Nerdist podcasts. And then 2 days after that, on November 3rd, I'm signing at the Barnes & Noble in Burbank, just north of Hollywood. And I think that is like 6 to 9. I think all of these are basically in the evening. And I think that one's like at 6 to 9. I think I'm doing a little talk there in addition to just signing. So those are the 3 that have been confirmed so far. And then my publishers, got others in the works, but, that comes later.
All right.
So thanks for letting me plug.
Oh, yeah. I mean, dude, it's a good book. It seriously is. I haven't spoken with Jason about this because we're doing it right now, but you are welcome on anytime. This has been delightful.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, dude.
I have enjoyed it.
Well,
he's laughed more at you than he ever has at me. That's for sure.
Thanks, guys. Well, the feeling's mutual. I love your show, and I know how what you're doing is not easy to do because especially in this field, because people are so passionate about this stuff that sometimes just offering any opinion is like cutting open a vein, but you guys do it eloquently and with humor and with a sense of perspective, and which is much welcome.
I think I'm gonna cry. That's going on something.
I might too. It's been a very emotional
That's going on our cover image on Facebook.
Very happy
anyway. So anyway, guys, this is absolutely, as I said, a must-have for Batman fans. I've enjoyed the hell out of it. It is called 100 Things Batman Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die. And while you're at it, just go ahead and get the 100 Things Superman fans should know and do before they die. Is sitting right here on my desk with the Batman. That's a good question. You like Batman better than Superman? How do you feel?
The Batman and Superman are, as they are for many people, they're my 2 dads. They're 2 fathers who have been there for me each has been there at a different time in my life when I've needed them. So I can't say that I really like one more than the other because they fulfill different needs. And have helped me and so many other people get through so many different times and periods for different reasons.
Cool, man.
But I like both of them more than any other superhero. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, no, that's a fine answer. That's, my God, you were
preach
class act.
Flatter.
Yeah, no, I joke and I probably do like Batman a little bit better, but I do get tired of the constant hateful flame war stuff on. I'm a member of a lot of groups on Facebook and stuff, and gosh, it's just like 20 of them a day in every group. Just someone starting a fight about Batman versus Superman. I'm like, oh man, come on, guys. They're friends in the comics.
Right. And there's an awful lot of real world problems right now that could be debated instead.
Oh, yeah, you don't want to bring that up, though, because then people start bringing up Superman working for Reagan in Dark Knight Returns.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
But seriously, oh, my God, good book, and a great guest, so...
Great little compilation
thanks,
of God, it's a lot of history distilled well.
Oh, thank you. Cheers.
I think this beats Wikipedia. Wikipedia has all those little I always get distracted on Wikipedia because I'll be reading some exhaustive, thing that happened in the Golden Age, and then there's a link, and I'm like, well, what is that? And I got to click, and then 6 hours later, I'm researching peanuts, and I don't even know how I got there.
It happens.
So don't go to Wikipedia. Buy 100 Things Batman fans should know and do before they die instead.
Yeah.
You'll get the answer you were looking for, and then you'll have time to do something else with your life.
Thanks.
Anyway, I think we're gonna wrap it up. And where do you tweet, man? Where can they find you online?
At J McCabe JMACABRE. And then on Facebook, which might be of greater interest to readers of these books, because that is where I'm putting outtakes from the books, photos that didn't quite make it into the book, behind the scenes type stuff, photos from book tours, photos from the Comic-Cons and all that. That's a Facebook page, Joseph McCabe, author, all one word. So yeah, that's the one that's book-centric.
All right. You heard the man. Go do that, guys. As for us, we tweet at DC on Screen. You can find us on Facebook as well. DCOnScreen.com for every free episode. And that's all of them. All 434 now. So, we'll be back next week with our extended news, because we skipped the news this week. We had 3 episodes, and we'll also we're going to have probably premiere reviews for all the shows before that.
Oh, it's going to be a
Until
long
then,
week.
guys.
We're going to be there for you.
Until then, guys, keep some DC on your screen. Our opening narration was from Dan Jurgens' The History of the DC Universe, Part 3 of 10, as featured in DC 52 Week 4. It was performed by me, David Z. Robertson. Intro music by Jason Goss and Michael Shackelford. Michael's band Future Elevators can be found on Spotify or future-elevators.com. Our introduction was performed by Eli Ophelders of Stealing the Remote, which lives on SoundCloud and can be found on iTunes and Stitcher. We're a proud member of the Giant Size Team Up Network, GiantSizeTeamUp.com. DC On Screen is a maladjusted production. Visit maladjusted.tv for more from me and Jason, including sketch comedy and improvised web series, vlogs, parodies, and more.